You can't convince someone to love you. And that is the law of the land. It is why it's one of the core truths of my book. It begins with you, the 9 hard truths about love that will change your life. And I learned that you can't convince someone to choose you or love you or be in a relationship with you. I learned that the hard way. I think we all learn that the hard way. The reason why it's such an important truth and why it's so difficult to deal with or to come to terms with, I should say, is because every single one of us has a fear that we are not enough in some way. Now, not everyone has that fear at the same level as others. For some, it's all consuming. All of us have a fear that we are not enough in some way. Now, we don't all share the fear in the same way. For some people, it's all consuming. For other people, they feel it only in certain circumstances. But for sure, the fear that we are inadequate in some way, not lovable in some way, not good enough in some way is something that we are all going to confront inside of a romantic relationship or situation, whether it's dating or we're in a marriage or a long-term relationship. Now, the goal, for lack of a better way to describe it, is to be in relationships where we are not constantly questioning our worthiness. That's never a good thing. But once in a while, feeling insecure in a relationship, the reality that our partner or the person that we're seeing could decide to leave us at any moment. I mean, this uncertainty is built into the very fabric of romantic love, which is that no one is obligated to remain in a relationship with us. No one is obligated to choose us. No one is obligated to love us, and we're not obligated to love anyone else. It's it's our free will to decide who we are going to emotionally invest in. And then part of it is just our feelings. We can't force ourselves to feel something that we're not feeling. And so this idea that we cannot convince someone to love us is so incredibly important, because when we do try to orchestrate scenarios in which we could be chosen or loved or not left by someone who we love, when we try to manipulate or beg, we lose our dignity. It becomes a self-betrayal. I've said this before. Maybe you've heard me say it before. I'm not quite sure. But, you know, I spent 2 years in my marriage from many years ago. I described this in the book. It felt like I spent 2 years trying to convince my then husband that I was good enough. And it was very difficult, because I felt more or less incredibly chosen before we got married, except for a couple of red flags that were if you listen to the episode from 2 weeks ago, I read a chapter from the book, It Begins With You, my book, where I outline, I don't read the whole chapter, but I read a section from the chapter where I outline probably the biggest red flag that I overlooked. But in any case, when we try to convince someone to love us, whether we do that by changing who we are to please them, outright begging them to not leave or to give us more love, or we somehow try to manipulate this scenario, the situation, so that we can get them to be more interested in us or more invested in us, more in love with us. One, it is absolutely exhausting. It is so taxing on our systems. And two, you know, we might get it to work short term, but it never works long term. And only what we're only doing is actually holding someone hostage emotionally. And when we do that, we end up imprisoning ourselves in hell, because it will never, ever feel good to know that someone is staying in a relationship with us because it's convenient, or staying because they feel guilty, or staying because we are their second option, or staying because they're lonely or bored. We all deserve reciprocated love. And that's different than nourishing a relationship or fighting for a relationship. In a relationship, in order for a relationship to really thrive, both people need to be regularly, daily, adding to the emotional bank account of the relationship. And we do that by meeting each other's needs. We do that by, more specifically, by understanding what our partner needs to feel loved and going out of our way to give them love in a way that we know that they will receive it. It also means receiving love and allowing love in, and that maybe our partner is giving us love in a way that maybe we don't particularly want or we don't particularly register, but we know that they're doing it out of love. So we receive it. We receive it. We add to the emotional bank account by the way that we talk to each other daily, how we say goodnight to each other, how we say good morning to each other. When we check in during the day, like, hey, how are you, via text, we're adding to the emotional bank account of the relationship. Sitting down, working through problems and having difficult conversations is a very significant way where we are adding a significant amount of value to the emotional bank account, because the difficult conversations are what prevent problems from becoming so big that they become insurmountable later on. So these are the ways in which we keep love alive. We keep love alive by making sure that we tend to our sex lives together. By doing fun things together. But that is very different than having to fight for someone's love. It's one thing to fight for the relationship, but the relationship is rocky and you're putting in the work and you're dedicated and you're doing what needs to be done, versus having to fight for someone's love. This episode is sponsored by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. So almost enough said, right? You can see all your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going, because I can guarantee you that you are wasting money on some subscriptions that you don't even know that you have anymore. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium services. I know. So let's just talk about this for a second. You sign up for something, you forget about it. The trial period ends, then you're charged month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're not actually using them. In fact, I just learned that 85% of people, that's huge, have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. It's such a waste of money. And thanks to Rocket Money, I can now see all my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now I'm saving more money. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/onlove today. That's rocketmoney.com/onlove. rocketmoney.com/onlove. And when that fear of not being enough is triggered in a relationship, and then we become insecure, as anyone would. we can very easily lose ourselves. And it's not something to pathologize. It's very difficult to lose love, and it can be very difficult for some people to not get chosen by someone who you want them to love you. And then we go into these stories of how we're not good enough. And a lot of times these stories are just stories that are reinforcing a core belief that we had going into it. And if our self-esteem and our self-love and self-acceptance is low as it is, and then you add this to it, it becomes an incredibly emotionally catastrophic and traumatic experience. And so the knee-jerk reaction is, I can't lose love, I have to convince them. Or we get, if it's a dating scenario, we can get so fixated on, I know this is the right person. Or maybe we put them on a pedestal, they're everything that we've ever wanted, and we feel this extreme pull to them. And so then we do these things to get them to choose us, and that might work, but then we're not being authentic, and then they're choosing something that's not authentic. And then the relationship just kind of builds up on a lie, and then you become resentful, or you're going to feel chronically insecure in the relationship. And so this idea of letting go when someone wants to leave, wants to exit the relationship, when someone wants to stay with you but doesn't really want to commit, lives with you, spends almost every day with you, but for whatever reason can't say I love you. We have to have the courage to release them, because the alternative is worse. And it's not like you're going to wake up and just say, oh, because I get this question all the time, well, how do I let go? It's not like you're going to wake up the next day and just say, oh, I've let go. That's a process. But at first, it's just accepting that you have been in a position where you're trying very hard to be enough for someone so that they choose you, so they love you. I want to encourage you to let go of that fight, because what's on the other side of letting go of that is your freedom and is the path to greater self-worth. And it opens doors to other things in your life, like a relationship where the love is reciprocated. And I know that it can be incredibly complicated if you're in a marriage or in a relationship and they want to leave. And, let's face it, many relationships end because we all play some sort of role in that ending. And it can be very hard. Someone wants to leave, and maybe there's a part of you that knows that you messed up in some way, or you have certain struggles, and those struggles you just got in the way. And then you just want to say, no, but I'll be better. I'll do better. That's a very, very painful position to be in. And the truth still remains that you can't convince someone. You can't convince someone to be ready for a relationship. You can't convince someone to be ready for you in a relationship. You can't convince someone to love you the way that you need to be loved. All you can do is guide them. This is how I love to be loved. And, they either are going to make the effort to love you better or not. Let me just put it to this way. When I made the decision that, because I've tried to convince people to love me. I've had people try to convince me to love them. I've been on both sides, and both just feel terrible. When I adopted the philosophy that I'm about to share with you, this created a lot of peace internally. And when I've helped people adopt this philosophy, it helped them reach a tremendous amount of peace as well, which is, if someone believes, and you can apply this to a job opportunity, but if someone believes that their happiness is somewhere else, I will never be the person who stands in the way between a person and whatever they think is going to make them happy. The door is open. There's absolutely, one of the standards that I have for myself is that I'm not going to be in any kind of relationship, whatever the nature is, unless people want to be there. Never, ever want someone. I never want to be a second choice. I never want to be because of someone's boredom. I never, ever, ever, ever. And so some of you listening to this might have to hear that, perhaps you're in something that doesn't feel, that's not 100% for you. But you're in it because, well, it's better than nothing else. Or you're in it because you're a little lonely. Or in it because you're a little bored. Or you're in it because it's safe and it's easy. I really want to encourage you to be honest with that person. Because that's how we string people along. And at the end of the day, it's not kind to anyone. It's not kind to them, but it's also not fair for you to do to yourself. It's important to be very intentional with the relationships that we're in. And that doesn't mean you can absolutely be in a relationship where it's casual and it's not intense. And, maybe you're just looking for some companionship or just looking for more of a sexual relationship. All of that is fine, as long as the other person is on the same page as you. The problem is the denial or the lies that we tell to ourselves and to the other that this is fine when it's really not what we want. We can feel in our bodies when we're with someone who's not fully all in with us. If you're in that situation, it's time to get really honest with yourself about what you are doing or not doing to maintain this relationship. What truths are you withholding? How hard are you working just to keep the status quo? What lie are you maybe telling yourself or the other person? In what way are you compromising your dignity, your self-esteem, your authenticity? And so there is great power in letting someone feel what they feel and not trying to change their mind. And so that's why I included that truth, you can't convince someone to love you, in my book, and why I wanted to further examine it today, because it's incredibly important. And there's this saying, sort of like a platitude, there's two: rejection is protection and rejection is redirection. These are actually very true. And what you're tasked with, which is what we're all tasked with, is if you are in this position you're going to see that your mind is going to come up with a reason behind it all that is somehow going to make you not worthy of the love that you desire. And you have to be very, very careful to not get seduced by that story, because it can be, for some people, for some of us, it can be a very compelling story. And it can be a very seductive story because it gets to reinforce all our old stuff. And then we get to feel sorry about ourselves. And then we get to feel terrible. And we get to go deeper and deeper into an emotional pattern of self-deprecation. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. In the beginning of the year, usually it's January, it can bring like 365 blank pages waiting to be filled. And in 2025, maybe you're ready for a big change. Maybe you actually just want to rest more. Maybe there's a part of your story you've been wanting to revise. Life isn't just about resolutions that fade by February or goals that fade by February. It's about picking up the pen, honestly, and becoming the author of your own life. And you can think of therapy as sort of like your editorial partner, honestly. It helps you to write new chapters and create the meaningful story you deserve to live. And we all need help living a meaningful story. And therapy is really not just about when there's something tragic happening or something very difficult. It's really just about, like I said, creating the life that you want to live. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable, convenient, and it serves over 5 million people worldwide. You get access to a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost, which is huge because sometimes it takes a little while to find that right therapist because it's a relationship like every other. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/onlove to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/onlove. And so if you can see that some people come into our lives, they come into our lives for various reasons. And if someone is not all in or they fall out of love, like you will see one day why your destiny is not tied to this person. And these are not my words, but if someone can walk away from you, you have to just let them walk. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to go through a lot of processing and some pain. But I never, ever want you to stand in the way of that. That's what it means to sort of to let go of someone gracefully. And again, just to reiterate, to go against this, it's like a law of the land. To go against it is like to go against a law of nature. And we cannot fight the laws of nature. We will always lose. And so if you're in a sort of complicated situation and you're staying in something and you don't know, it's time to get really real with yourself and maybe have a very honest conversation with the other person. To have to get over someone, to have to move on from something or someone, as hard as that is, in the long run, in the long term, it is far easier to do that than it is to remain in something where you don't feel like the feelings are reciprocated. If you're dating and you have this habit and you notice that you're working really hard to kind of get someone to like you, really need to take a moment and stop and pause and ask yourself, why this person? Why am I working so hard? Why must it be this person? Because our minds can get incredibly rigid. And if you are stubborn, and if you are one of those people where when you want something, you want it, it's like the claws of your mind can really grip on this idea of someone. And it's you really need to ask yourself, why them? Why is it so important? And then you have to get honest with yourself about what you're doing or not doing to try to orchestrate a certain outcome. And to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out and let go of that fight. And I want to play a couple questions that were submitted to me where the person actually spoke it. So I'm going to play it. And these are from two people who it's not so obvious, the fighting to get someone to love them. And that's why I chose these questions. And I think that the answers are going to be incredibly illuminating for you.
Dear Jillian, I recently discovered your podcast and I value your wisdom and your delivery of it. I find you very eye-opening and refreshing. I would love your advice on my current situation. My boyfriend of just over 3 years broke up with me 6 weeks ago. He's 34 and I'm 42. Due to unhealthy relationships I've had in the past, I've always had the mindset that I would never have kids. He voiced that someday that may be something he would want. The conversation was had at the very beginning of our relationship. Fast forward a year. I told him I loved him, and he stated he needed more time to love me back. I'd had heartbreak before, and immediately went in to protect my heart mode and put up an emotional wall. Over the second year, my wall gradually came down. He's such a kind person, and I ultimately felt, since our core values aligned, religion, politics, and ethics, that I needed to get over myself. I started to feel like this is someone I could start a family with. I never told him because he, still at this point, has never told me he loved me. I tried to have conversations along the way about whether he saw me in his future, etc., and was always met with the one word yes or silence. This last year, I could sense that he was pulling away, which triggered my anxiety and that insecure attachment. When he broke up with me, he said he didn't want to miss out on the experience to have kids, and he didn't love me. I told him I'm open to kids, but he isn't with me now. I am heartbroken. He has been such a constant part of my life, and for him to decide to be okay without me and his is brutal pain. We work together, so it's difficult to avoid him. We've remained friends and have slept together a few times since the breakup. Do I let these 3 years go and lose all hope of getting back together? I love him, and I want to be loved in return. I'm just hurting. What do I do? Thanks in advance.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to this person and to you and anyone who's hurting. Heartbreak it's one of the most difficult things that we will ever have to face is letting go of someone. So I have nothing but so much empathy and compassion and wish I could give you a hug. What I will say is, yeah, you have to let him go because in 3 years, he has not been able to say, I love you. And that's a problem. And it's interesting because we can go into a whole head trip. They're so nice. They're so kind. We have the same values and ethics. And look, kindness, same values and ethics, like that's great. And then it's a complete mind game to then say, well, I found this really kind person and we have these similar values and ethics and goals in life. But there's a disconnect, and the disconnect is he's not able to say, I love you. And I understand that your walls went up, and that probably, when walls go up or when walls are up, we can't really contribute to the emotional bank account of a relationship because we're too busy guarding ourselves. And in order to contribute to the emotional bank account of a relationship, we have to be open. We have to be vulnerable. The walls have to be down. That doesn't mean you don't have any boundaries, but those walls have to come down. This episode is sponsored by Skims. Okay, so I am obsessed with Skims. The underwear, the bras, I'm just obsessed. And the reason why I'm obsessed, well, there's a few reasons. One, the fabric, the cotton, it is so incredibly comfortable and it fits perfectly. And even though it's so simple, actually is very sexy. I absolutely love some of their bra tops because I can wear them underneath, I don't know, like a t-shirt, or I can wear them under like a nice blouse and it gives me a little bit more coverage. And to be honest, so I'm a yoga person. I don't run. And so the traditional sports bra, I personally can't do. I find it very uncomfortable. I find the straps too thick. I find that they dig into my skin. I find that it's just all very constricting. And even though I realize some people might need that support, for me, it has never been something I could ever do. And I've always been looking for like the perfect undergarments to wear during yoga that doesn't feel restrictive and also just blends well with my t-shirt because it has to look good. And I have found that in Skims. I haven't found it in anything else other than Skims. I tried the Fits Everybody thong from Skims and I'm a convert. Literally the feeling is like no other underwear I have ever worn before. It's stretchy. It's very soft. It fits perfectly. The Fits Everybody collection is available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X. You can shop now at skims.com and Skims stores. After you place your order, be sure to let them know that I sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you are looking for the perfect gift for yourself or for your Valentine or just your friend, Skims just launched their best Valentine's shop ever. Available in sizes for women, men, and kids. So check out the Fits Everybody collection at www.skims.com/onlove, #SkimsPartner. And so there's no doubt that things may have gotten complicated in your relationship, but the thing that really, really stands out to me are two things. Number one, after a year, he can't say I love you. If someone, after being with you for a year, can't say I love you, they don't love you. And it's very, very, it's likely never going to happen. So yes, there are people who may have emotional blocks to that and whatnot, but either way, it's you deserve to be with someone who feels the same way as you do, number one, and two, has the emotional awareness, maturity, and capacity to express love to you. Otherwise, it is just painful. And it's painful. Look, your walls went up. The two of you are not having real conversations. You'd ask him, do you see a future with me? He would either be silent or say yes. But then the justification goes on. And the justification is, well, he's so nice and we have dissimilar values and ethics. This is not to demonize him at all. It's just to show you your process and how we can so easily start to then justify things. And yes, you had a reaction to that. And your reaction, instead of saying, well, why don't you love me? Or what do you think that is? Is it an intangible for you? Is it an attraction thing for you? Is it that you're afraid to open up? Is it that you care very deeply for me, but like I said, there's an intangible, there's just something missing for you? These are really tough questions to ask because then we have to hear things that will be very tough on our egos. And then we can go into that whole head trip about how we're not good enough. But we have to be really brave. And so instead of doing that, you thought, okay, let me go into self-protective mode, but stay in the relationship. So there's always, when we go through any sort of heartbreak, there is always an opportunity that I believe we would be better off all embracing to kind of look within and this is why I appreciate this question so much, because she's honest about sort of her reaction, but to kind of look at our reaction to something and what we learned from that reaction, and how we can do something differently, and why we went into that reaction, and our fear, right? So our fears can create walls, but we can also justify to stay in the relationship. And so now, because he's nice, and because you seem nice, and because you get along and you work together, which obviously adds a lot of confusion, it's like, okay, let's be friends and then let's sleep together a couple times. So you're going from a 3-year relationship in which there was never enough of the transparency that needed to be present into a situationship. And by sleeping with him, there is that I understand this is not a judgment, but that longing to be chosen and loved again. And you had that longing in the relationship. And so that is one way in which we are trying to convince someone indirectly. We're trying to influence them. We're hoping, we're wishing upon a star that they will come back to us and choose us and love us. If after 3 years, he still doesn't love you, you deserve so much more than that. And this is a really, really hard, but also perfect opportunity for you to explore, because you did mention that there was a history of some unhealthy relationships. And bravo for maybe choosing someone kind that maybe you haven't chosen in the past. So you're that much closer. But you're healing, you're getting better, but there's more layers to uncover. And so we don't want you to then get yourself in another quote unquote unhealthy scenario where you are not getting the love that you deserve. Another question.
Hi, Jillian. Your podcast was recently recommended to me, and I've been hooked ever since. I'm also excited to read your new book, It Begins With You. Thank you for sharing such thoughtful advice and wisdom. It's been a lifeline for me. I came out as a lesbian a year and a half ago at the age of 35. The journey has been challenging, especially navigating relationships with family members whose beliefs differ from mine. Amid these difficulties, I experienced love for the first time last year with a woman. It was also her first same-sex relationship, as she came out later in life as well. We dated for 6 months, and it quickly became serious. We traveled together, met each other's families, and started building a life together. In October, when we celebrated our 6-month anniversary, she told me, "I really like and love you, and have enjoyed every second of these last 6 months with you. It's so easy to do life with you, and I think that's huge." Her words meant so much to me, but just days later, she asked if we could go on a walk to talk. During that conversation, she admitted that it's difficult for her to express her emotions, but said she needed to be honest. Things were feeling too serious for her in our relationship. I was caught off guard and, unfortunately, reacted emotionally instead of fully validating her feelings. Still, I thanked her for being honest, and a few days later, we revisited the conversation. It seemed like we were back on track. She even texted me later that night saying, "I'm glad we talked," kiss emoji, and mentioned future plans. But the very next day, she called to break up with me. All she said was, "I can't do this," before hanging up the phone. The emotional whiplash has been devastating, and I've been struggling to process the grief, especially without understanding what went wrong or getting any real closure. My therapist suggested that her sudden change of heart might stem from unresolved childhood trauma, which I know she experienced. She also seems to have an avoidant attachment style, which I read can make intimacy and emotional closeness feel overwhelming. While that all makes sense logically, I still feel deeply abandoned emotionally. How can I begin to heal and move forward while carrying so much pain and confusion, especially without the closure I hoped for? Thank you for your advice. A heartbroken girl in Austin.
I just, I wish I could hug you. So first of all, the vulnerability that you must feel coming out as a lesbian later in life and then experiencing love for the first time with a woman, then it's really the first time. And that's your first love in many ways. And maybe in not many ways, in all ways. And you have the vulnerability of coming out and dealing with family members with different belief systems. That's intense. I can't even begin to imagine the intensity of it. I've had friends who've gone through that, but as someone who's never had to go through that, I can only imagine it. And so that, of course, makes you even more vulnerable. And then here you experience first love. It's different when we experience first love when we're adults, because then we're talking about future plans together and building a life together, which is not exactly what everyone experiences in their first love, maybe in their teens. And so there's just so much there, and there's so much. So I'm sure you know this, but it's important that not only is this just a very difficult situation, regardless of your sexual orientation, just to meet someone and have this amazing connection with them in 6 months, and you're meeting each other's families, but then compounded on top of that is that extra vulnerability of your circumstance. This episode is sponsored by Miracle Made. Your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you are too warm, too hot, you will not sleep. I know if I'm too hot, I will not sleep. And then for people who are too cold, that can impact your sleep quality as well. And so if you do have a hard time finding that perfect temperature at night, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. They are inspired by NASA. They use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. It's genius. And traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. Yes, I said it. It's vile. It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses, and just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning antibacterial bedding, such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. And then, of course, the most important thing, they're so incredibly comfortable. They're luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. And they feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So I can't sing their praises more, honestly. So upgrade your sleep this year. Go to trymiracle.com/Jillian to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. If you use our promo, Jillian, at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Jillian and use the code Jillian to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Jillian to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. And so it's a lot. So here's what I will say. What she did was not very nice. And yes, this could be an extreme end of the spectrum avoidant attachment style. This could have to do with, you said it was her first relationship with a woman because she came out late. Maybe this is something to do with her own internal conflict with coming out to her community and to her family. Maybe this is childhood trauma. It can be all those things. And it's not very nice. It's not very nice to make it seem like everything is great and then the next day pull away, or to talk about plans of the future and then literally not even 24 hours later to have a change of heart. You don't want to be with someone who can do that, regardless of what the reasoning is. And so this is where it gets tricky, because it brings to question, how can we love someone or really care about someone and see their light and their goodness while simultaneously protecting ourselves from them because they have things that they need to work through before they're able to be the kind of partner that makes for a good partner. Someone who is consistent and someone who isn't going to be hot and cold, someone who can open up their hearts. She is your first experience at love, and I just would hope that it's not going to scare you off too much. I know that the excitement of meeting someone new, and especially given this is, you coming out, that first 6 months can be so incredibly intense. And especially when we're meeting each other's families. And 6 months is when we're actually starting to really learn about someone too, and learn about who they are in a relationship. It's one of those wild paradoxes where we could feel so close to someone while at the same time they're still really a stranger in many ways. And so my heart goes out to you. And I chose this question because I could see a world in which she comes back and you take her back. And I would really caution you to think twice before you do that, or to think many times before you do that, because it's unkind. And you have to, and of course your abandonment stuff is coming up and it feels that way, but I really want to try to pull you out of that as much as possible. And those are your feelings, but watch the story, right? Because the things that we tell ourselves can reinforce a feeling, or it can make space for a new feeling. And so I understand that the abandonment is how you feel, and I don't blame you, and I would feel the same way. And also understand that you got carried away in a new connection, and I'm sure there were certain things that she told you along the way that maybe made you go, maybe this person has some fears around love. And, maybe there was something that you can look back and be like, oh, that was something that I need to pay attention to. But either way, what she did is not nice. And so I don't want this to stop you. I want you to get back in the saddle. I want you to date. I want you to meet lots of different people and women who you enjoy, and take it slow, and really get to know someone, and to see how ready they are for a relationship. Look, we can't guarantee that no one is going to hurt us again, but you definitely need to be with someone who has the capacity to invest in a relationship with you in the way that you can invest with them. Because right now, she does not have the tools to invest in the emotional bank account. And so you just have to be tender with your heart, watch the stories in your head. And I wouldn't take this girl back. If it presents itself, I wouldn't. And you're going to tell yourself, but she's scared. She's a good person. We have a connection. Maybe we can talk through this. Maybe we can work through this. But, she did this twice and it's not nice. And so fair warning. And my heart goes out to you. And that is it for this week's episode of Jillian on Love. I want to hear from you. Please reach out at hello@jillianonlove.com. I want to hear from you. Do you like me answering these questions? Are these helpful? Are you in a position where you've been trying to convince someone to love you? Have you ever been in this position and then let go and felt really proud of yourself? I want to hear that success story. And please, if there is anyone you know who could benefit from this episode, please do not hesitate to click share, because you just do not know whose life you could be changing by clicking share. And if you want even more, of course, there is my book. It Begins With You, The 9 Hard Truths About Love That Will Change Your Life, that hit the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm very proud of that. And I want to thank all of you for for playing such a huge role in that. I'm just so incredibly grateful. So thank you for being here. And until next time.